Hello my schoolers, you're welcome to my school YouTube channel. My name is Emmanuel and in today's video we'll be tackling JAMB CBT past questions for biology in the year 2024. Please don't go anywhere, stick around and we'll be right back. You're welcome back to my school YouTube channel. In today's video, we'll be tackling question 51 to 75. Now let's get down to question 51. One of the components of xylem tissue is, we have companion cell, we have trachea, we have sieve tube, we have epidermal. Actually, we know that both xylem and phloem, okay, are what we call vascular bundles or vascular tissues. They help in transporting water and nutrients, okay, from the roots to the different parts of the plant, okay. If you look at the options we have, the option A says companion cell, trachea, sieve tube, and epidermal. For companion cell and sieve tube, these are found in phloem, okay. Companion cells, sieve tubes are tissues that are found in the phloem, okay, not the xylem, okay. So we can strike out companion cell option A and option C, okay. So we are left with epidermal and trachea. Now epidermal usually are found in the epidermal bundles, okay. So they are not found in xylem, they are not vascular bundles, okay. So epidermal are found in epidermal tissues, okay. So they are not. So option D is not out. Now option B, trachea are usually they are long lignified wall, okay. They are tube-like structures that are found in the xylem, okay. Let's look at the diagram to see how the trachea looks like in the xylem. So this is the stem. You can see the diagram. This is the stem, okay, of a plant, and then if it is dissected opened this way, okay, you can see this is, we have the xylem parenchyma at this point, okay. We have the vessel inside of it, okay. When you split open, okay, the stem, you see this is the stem, and then inside you can see this. Now this is the trachea. Now this long lignified wall, we call it long lignified wall, you can find there like a tube kind of. This is trachea. So, and this is the xylem what fibers inside of it. So all of these are found in the xylem, not in the phloem, okay. Let's move back to our options and see what we have. From the diagram that was just shown now, you can see that we do not have companion cell there because companion cells are found in the phloem, okay. Then we have sieve tube are also found in the phloem, okay. The epidermal is found in the epidermal tissue, okay, not in the xylem, okay. But one of the components of xylem tissue is actually trachea, okay. They are long lignified wall, okay. You can find them the way they are tube-like in nature. I just showed us the diagram now. So the correct answer here is option B. Now let's move on to question number 52. Which of the following statements explains the theory of natural selection? Well, the natural selection theory was actually brought about by Charles Darwin, okay? And then that was what was referred to as, even up to now, we still refer to it as the survival of the fittest, okay? Where organisms that have traits, that have characters that are able to blend them, okay, make them adapt to that environment, they're able to survive, okay, they're able to reproduce in that environment, and they're able to what? To live with survival. While those ones that are not able to, they are fizzled out, okay, they cannot cope, they don't have traits that can make them reproduce, that can make them, you know, develop new species in that environment. They'll just fizzle out, okay. It could be as a result of competition, maybe for space, for food, you know, for, you know, factors, whether biotic and abiotic factors that could help them. Now it says that which of the following statement explains the theory of natural selection? Option A says there is no struggle for existence. No, that is not it. Remember I said it is also referred to as the survival of the fittest. So which means organisms are able to what? To adapt. They have traits, they develop traits that make them adapt that environment, and then they reproduce, they live in that environment, they reproduce and give birth to young ones, new species, offsprings that look like them in that particular environment. So they are able to sustain, you know, the generation of that. Option A says there is no struggle for existence. Of course, there has to be struggle for existence because it is survival of the fittest. So option A is eliminated. Option B says new species get better adaptation. Of course, it has to do with how they are able to adapt. The young ones that are giving birth to they have to adapt in that environment. Of course, option B is more likely. Let's look at option C. The weaker offspring are eliminated. Well, the weaker offspring, maybe they are unable to cope with they could not have the traits, okay, but this is also fine, but this is a better explanation of what the natural selection has to do with, okay, because those ones that are able to adapt are selected, okay, that have the traits to be able to reproduce are selected and give birth to young ones that begin to adapt in that situation. So option B is more likely. Option D says unused structures disappear later. Unused structure, okay, that has to do with the principle of use and disuse, okay, that was given by Lamarck, okay, J.B. Baptist Lamarck actually gave us that. So from all of these options now, we're talking about which one explains the theory of natural selection. Theory of natural selection has to do with the new species get better adaptation. Option B. Option D, I want to look at that again. Unused structures disappear later. They say maybe some animals that have some traits, they are not using them, okay, after some time they begin to lose those features. Like I said, it was brought by J.B. Lamarck, okay, that gave us that. That's what we call the principle of the theory of Lamarckism. So the option, the one that actually explains the theory of natural selection given by Charles Darwin is actually option B. New species get better adaptation. So the correct answer is option B. Now on to question number 53. The chemical and physical composition of soil is an example of what? Option A says climatic factor. Well, climatic factors are environmental conditions, okay, that affect the environment, okay. When we say environmental conditions, that they affect the climate of a particular environment, okay. For instance, we talk about the temperature. Is it high, is it low? Those are examples of climatic factors, okay, that can affect the climate. If we talk about precipitation, those are examples of climatic factor. Option B says topographic factor. Yeah, topographic factor has to do with the nature, okay, of the earth surface, the soil. How does it look like? We are talking about the texture of the soil, okay. How does it look like when you touch the sand, the soil? That is topographic. Don't forget, we are talking about what? Chemical and physical composition of the soil. Edaphic factor has to do with what? Both the chemical and the physical composition of the soil. We'll be talking about the texture. Yes, the texture here has to do. For the topographic factor, we look at the slope, okay. We look at how slopy the soil is. The soil is it slopy, is it toppy, is it hilly? That's what topography is. But edaphic factor has to do with the texture of the soil. When you touch it, how does it feel? Okay, those are the physical and the chemical composition of the soil. That's edaphic factor. While chemical factor has to do with the chemical composition of the soil, okay, the pH, talking about the pH level. Is it acidic? Is it alkaline? Okay, the chemical composition of that soil, that is what chemical factors are. So talking about the chemical and physical composition of the soil is all about the edaphic factor. So the correct answer here is option C, edaphic factor. Question number 54. The abiotic factor that affects the population growth of an organism is what? We have the biotic and abiotic factor. Biotic factors are factors that have to do with organic factors like living and non-living factors, okay, that can enhance or that can affect a particular environment or community, okay, where living organisms live in. But when we talk about abiotic factors are non-living factors that can affect. For instance, if a place is too cold or is it too hot for an organism to live in, okay, that is abiotic because we are talking about the temperature of that place, okay. If water, maybe rain falls, okay, how does it affect organisms that live in an environment? Do they survive? Are they ejected out of that environment to another place? Those are abiotic factors because they are non-living. So we talk about the soil, we talk about the water, we talk about rainfall, we talk about temperature. Those are examples of abiotic factor. So the abiotic factor that affect the population growth of an organism is predator. Now, when we talk about predator is an organism that is preying, okay, that is feeding on smaller organisms, okay. That is, of course, that is a biotic factor, okay. So this is eliminated. Option B says rainfall. Yeah, rainfall. When rain falls, how does it affect the organisms in that community, in that environment? The growth of organisms, of course, it can lead to flooding, can lead to erosion, and most organisms in that place will not thrive and will not be able to reproduce and grow there. So this is abiotic factor, is a non-living. Option C says food shortage. Of course, that is a factor also, but that it is not abiotic factor because food, has to do with components that are living. Okay, so we are talking about biotic factor, and diseases also a biotic factor. So among these options now, the only abiotic factor that we have here is rainfall. So the correct answer is option B. Question number 55. The cells responsible for transmitting messages to the effectors are called what? The cells responsible for transmitting messages to the effectors are called what? They are called motor neurons. Now, the motor neurons are also what we call the efferent neurons. What do? They transmit. First, how do we identify the motor neurons? The motor neurons, they have the long axon and what we call the short dendrites. Okay, that is the characteristics. That's how you can know them and differentiate them from the sensory neurons because they are close. Now, what happens? The motor neurons, usually, they will convey or transport impulses. Okay, transport messages, transport impulses from the central nervous system, that's the CNS, to the effector, or what we call the efferent neurons. When we talk about efferent neurons, we talk about the glands. Okay, we talk about the muscles. Okay, those are examples in the body. Those are examples of the efferents. Okay, effectors, or what we call the efferent neurons. Okay, so messages, impulses are transferred from the central nervous system, usually, to the effectors. Okay, that's what the motor neurons do. Okay, but the sensory neurons usually will convey or we translate impulse, or we transport impulses from the sense organs, okay, in the body to the central nervous system. Look at the difference between them. These motor neurons will transmit impulses, okay, from the central nervous system to the effectors, the muscles, the glands, and so on. Okay, while the sensory neurons will transport, impulses from the sense organs to the central nervous system. They will now convert mechanical forces into electrical forces. That's what the sensory neurons do. Now, the air cells are found in the ear, okay, in the inner part of the ear. What they do is they just ensure the balancing and the hearing aid in humans for the hearing. Okay, the air cells actually help us in doing that. Okay, and option D says relay neurons. Relay, just as the name implies, relay has to do with there is a passage. Okay, there is a movement from one to another. So the transportation, the relay neurons actually connect the motor neurons to the what? To the sensory neurons. That's what the relay neurons do. They connect, okay, they meet together, they join together, transmit from the motor neurons to the what? To the sensory neurons. So with all of this explanation now, the question says the cells responsible for transmitting messages to the effectors, in other words, to the efferent neurons, the glands, the muscles, they are called what? They are called the motor neurons. So the correct answer is option A, because they transport or they transmit impulses from the central nervous system to the effector. So the correct answer is option A. Question number 56. The oxygen transported to all parts of the body during blood circulation is used for what? Option A says growth and development of cells, removal of waste products, release of energy from food, formation of carboxyl hemoglobin. Actually, the red blood cells usually contain what we call the hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the red pigment. Okay, what is responsible for the redness of the color, the red color in blood? Okay, the red blood cells. That's what we call hemoglobin. And what does the hemoglobin do? Hemoglobin usually, that pigment, its aim is to what? To look for oxygen and then bond together with oxygen to form the oxyhemoglobin. Okay, now the oxyhemoglobin, they are now together, oxygen and hemoglobin. It is only hemoglobin that can carry that oxygen that is needed, okay, for energy in the body of living organisms. Okay, so once the hemoglobin binds with oxygen that we breathe in or that we get maybe from the food that we have, now the oxygen is needed in the body for energy to carry out metabolic activities in the body of living organisms. So the hemoglobin carries the oxygen straight up to the body, and then what does it do? It will now release the energy. Once it gets to the site where it's needed, of course, the blood with oxygen has been mixed. oxyhemoglobin with oxygen, and then it has been transported, okay, from the heart straight to the part of the body where it is needed. So it will now release energy once it gets there from the food that we take in, whether it's energy for giving food, whether it is lipids, whether it's carbohydrates, whether it's, so it will now release energy from what? From the food that we eat. That is when we can now carry out metabolic activities in the body. That's why we discover that anyone short of oxygen as human being cannot survive. Then there will now be need for what? For external source of oxygen, so that the person can respire and carry out metabolic activity. Of course, you know that in the food that we eat, for respiration to take place, if you do not eat, it will be difficult for you to what? To respire, okay? To carry out other metabolic activities. So option A says growth and development of cells. Okay, oxygen transported to all parts of the body during blood circulation. During blood circulation, that's the key word. Okay, what is it used for? Removal of waste products? No. Option C, release of energy from food? Yes. Option D says formation of carboxyl hemoglobin? No. The oxygen does not form carboxyl hemoglobin. Okay, hemoglobin is present in the in the red blood cell. Okay, already. Okay, so the correct answer here is option C, release of energy from food. Question number 57. After fertilization in plants, the zygote develops into what? Usually, when the sperm cell, don't forget we are talking about plants, okay? When the sperm cells, usually in humans or in animals, okay, fertilizes or meets with the egg cells, okay, fertilization process will take place. And once fertilization takes place, zygote is formed first, okay? When the zygote gets food, get nourishment, okay, after some time, it develops into an embryo. Of course, the same thing is applicable in plants, okay? We might not talk about the sperm cell, okay, in plants, but we talk about the pollen grains, okay? Pollen grains in anther, usually, when you have them transported, okay, they will now mix with what? The stigma. We have the stigma in the plant also, okay? So we have the sperm cell usually, okay, will fertilize the egg cell. Okay, once the fertilization takes place, the zygote is formed first. Okay, once the zygote is formed, the zygote will now develop into what we call embryo. The embryo is embedded, okay, it's embedded in the seed of the plant. So I'm talking about the plant now. It's embedded in the seed of the plant. So the question says, after fertilization in plants, the zygote develops into, not into fruit, because the fruit is what, where we have the seed inside, but the embryo is embedded. The embryo is actually in the seed, okay? After some time, when some conditions maybe in the environment, that are suitable comes into the seed, then it can now begin to develop again into a new plant, okay? So which means that the embryo is what is formed, but is embedded inside of the seed. So option A says fruit is eliminated. Option B says an embryo, yes. Option D says seed. The embryo is in the seed, so you cannot say the seed. So what is formed after fertilization is what the zygote develops into an embryo first, okay, which is inside the seed. Okay, so it's not seed. Option D says an endosperm. So the correct answer here is option B, an embryo. Now question 58. We have a diagram here. Of course, this is the bean shape, diagram. Of course, that's your kidney. So once you're able to identify this, we have the different parts that make up that. The question says we should use the diagram to answer the question that follows. The organ is responsible for what? Okay, what is this organ? The kidney. What is it responsible for? Option A says production of heat. Yeah, for production of heat, the brain is responsible, the liver is responsible, but the kidney does not produce heat, even though it partakes in balancing, okay, in regulation of the heat process, but it does not, is not involved in the production of heat. We talk about the brain, the liver. So option A is what is eliminated. Option B says osmoregulation. Osmoregulation is a process where the organ, okay, the kidney, actually balances or regulates the content of water, the water balance, and then the electrolyte in the body of an organism. When there is excess, it tries to what? To moderate, to regulate it so that it comes to moderate. When there is, low, water content, okay, in the body, it tries to what? To balance it up and raise it so that the water level and the electrolyte level in the body of organism that is responsible, that is, actually needed at a particular time is present there. So the kidney does this work of osmoregulation. Vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction has to do with the constriction of the vessel. Okay, the constriction, when we have the blood vessels, like we have the muscles, okay, usually they are constricted, they are narrowing. The muscles that carries blood, okay, in the body, you know, when it becomes narrowed, instead of if it is wide there this way, the smooth muscle becomes tightened and narrow, such that the blood that is supposed to be flowing through, okay, is not flowing as usual again, because the part which the blood is supposed to flow through is now been narrowed. Okay, so because it's narrow, it is constricted, so the blood that should flow in will not go in as much as it should, so the blood pressure becomes increased, because the small, you know, part that is available will need more force, you know, to send blood that is needed at the rate that it's supposed to be. So because of that, of course, this usually leads to what we call the blood pressure, the vasoconstriction. So it is not the function of the kidney that does that. Then the production of hormones. Yes, the kidney does the secretion of hormones. It secretes, you know, hormones in the body that is responsible. So among all of these options now, the correct answer here is option B, osmoregulation. The kidney helps in balancing or regulating the water and the electrolyte that is present in the body. So the correct answer is option B. Question 59. Which of the following evidences of evolution employs the use of radioisotope dating? Now, radioisotope dating has to do with, because we need to understand that first before we go through the options. Okay, the radioisotope dating has to do with the use of radioactive, you know, the fossil records, okay, to be able to trace how many organisms, what organisms had lived in a particular area or had lived on Earth over how many years, from generation to generation. It is the radioisotope dating that helps us do that. And when we talk about radioisotope dating, we are talking about, you know, organic matters, okay, fossil. That's how we talk about the fossil records, okay, has to do with how they have lived, for how many years they have lived, what animal, what organism, what plant had lived in a particular environment or community over the years, whether 10,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, in a particular environment. It is the radioisotope, the radioactive, you know, dating that helps us, the scientists, to discover that. So when we talk about option A, says comparative anatomy. The comparative anatomy has to do with the parts of the body, okay, the structures of the body that is present in different organisms. Of course, we are talking about comparing. For instance, we talk about the limb, we call it the pentadactyl limb, okay, of an organism. The humans, we have about 5 digits, okay, of the hand. Dog also has it. If you look at their limb, if you look at this thing, they have it. The bats, they also have the limb. We are comparing the limbs that we have. We have organisms that we have. The bat also has it, okay, even though they are different, but they have the 5 digits also in their limbs, okay, that have this. So we are comparing. That's what the comparative anatomy has to do with. That is an evidence of evolution, but the use of radioisotope is not required there. For embryology, it has to do with the organism, the young ones, okay, that actually give birth to by different organisms. That's the embryology. Of course, it's also an evidence of evolution, but it does not require the use of radioisotope. Option C says fossil record. Fossil records gives us the record of organisms that have lived in an environment over the years, for many years, for decades, for centuries, for generation to generation, and where they lived and how long they've been able to live can be calculated, how many years they have been able to live. So the fossil records helps us to do that. Of course, what is required here is actually the radioisotope. Radioactive elements are required. So the radioisotope dating is required for fossil records. And then we have the vestigial organs. So the correct answer here among this option here is option C, fossil records. Do you know you can take practice questions with our simulated JAMB CBT past questions? All you need to do is to click on the link in the description below that takes you to the Myschool website. There you'll be able to download the Myschool mobile app for your Androids and the Myschool software on your laptops and computers. Please go ahead and start practicing. Now let's move on to question number 60. Pentadactyl forelimbs of vertebrates function due to differences in environment is what? Please, you have to be careful. This question is controversial, okay? But it's so easy, okay? Pentadactyl forelimb, we just explained in the previous question now that pentadactyl forelimb of vertebrate has to do with what? The 5 digits, okay? Fingers that they have, like the five digits, of course. Penta means 5, okay? Dactyl forelimb. Forelimb has to do with what? The hand, the hand or the limbs they have in front of them, because we have vertebrates that don't stand erect like human, okay, like the dogs. The dogs have, you know, we can say they have 4 foot, but we have the ones in front are the 4 limbs, okay, then we have the hind limbs behind. So whichever vertebrates, so we can compare them, the 4 limbs, the pentadactyl, that's these 5 digits that we have. Like humans, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have bats have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If they are skeleton, you can see the bones that make them up. Now, pentadactyl 4-limb of vertebrate function due to differences in environment is what? Option A says comparative what? Anatomy. Now, comparative anatomy, physiological evidence, embryological evidence, fossil records. We just explained the fossil records now. Has to do with how many years those organisms have been able to stay. What organism had lived in an environment, okay? What organism had lived over the years, how many years did they live there? That's the fossil records, okay? So which is not, because we are talking about what? The function due to what? Differences. Now option C says embryological evidence, talking about, you know, the embryo, okay, of those organisms, different organisms that live in a particular place. Now that is having to do with what? Embryological, but it's not talking about what? The function due to what? Differences in environment. Option B says physiological evidence. So option C and D are eliminated. Now the answer is between comparative anatomy and physiological evidence. Now the both of them, comparative anatomy, actually are evidences, okay, that are used for pentadactyl 4-limb of vertebrates, both of them. But the difference is this: when we talk about comparative anatomy, comparative, as the name implies, compare. We are comparing the structures of the bones of the, you know, the 5 digits, the pentadactyl vertebrates, the different organisms, how the bones, the arrangement of the bones, the structure of the bones in them, how are they structured, how are they arranged. We are comparing that of this animal with the other organisms, with the other vertebrates, with the other mammal, with the other. We are comparing them. That is what the comparative anatomy has to do with. Generally, anatomy has to do with what? The structure, the anatomy of the body, the structure of the body. Okay, but when we talk about physiological evidence has to do with what? The physique, the function of that particular organism. Now we talk about the structure. Structure has to do with anatomy. Okay, the hand, how does it look like? The structure, the bone, how are they arranged? That is what? The anatomy. Okay, the eyes, the reproductive organs, those are the anatomy. Okay, but when it comes to the functions, we talk about the physiological evidence. So because of that, option A would have been, if the question had been pentadactyl 4-limb of vertebrate structures, okay, talking about the structures of that, that's what the comparative anatomy, the structures of the bones of the, you know, of the organisms that make up the pentadactyl 4-limb of the vertebrate, how are they structured, the bones, how are they arranged. But when you talk about the functioning of the 4-limb, you know, the pentadactyl 4-limb of the vertebrate, we talk about the physiological evidence. So because of that, the correct answer for this question is option B, physiological evidence. I believe you're enjoying this content. If yes, please don't forget to click on the like button, hit the subscribe button, and finally tap on the notification bell to keep you informed once we upload our next video. Let's move on to question number 61. The feeding relationship between ruminants and the bacteria in their digestive tract is called what? We have saprophytic, parasitic, symbiotic, heterotrophic. You need to understand the relationship that happens between the ruminants and then the bacteria first before you can answer this. Now, when we talk about the ruminants are animals, okay? Usually we say they chew their cud. That's one of their characteristics. They have 4-chambered stomach, okay? They have the ability to what? To regurgitate. When you see them like the cow, the cattle, when they eat food, they can eat it and store it. At the point where they are alone, they can begin to what? They regurgitate. They bring back the food they have eaten, consumed before, and then they begin to chew the cud. That's what we call the regurgitation. And then, so that's what ruminants do. And then in their stomach, they have some bacteria that help them to what? To digest those food so fast. They give, you know, rise to the enzymes that help to digest the food in their stomach. That's what the bacteria do. So the relationship between the ruminants and the bacteria is what? Now, the bacteria will live inside of the ruminant animal. So which means the ruminant gives habitat to this bacteria, okay, gives feeding, okay, food also to the bacteria, because the bacteria also feeds in the ruminants there, okay, shelters it, gives it food. So the bacteria is benefiting from what? From the ruminant animal. On the other hand, the ruminant animal also needs to digest the food that it has inside it. The food, the grasses they've consumed, and then they stored in the stomach. Okay, at the time they regurgitate, they bring it back and begin to chew it, and then they send it back. For easy digestion of that food, the bacteria releases the enzymes that are responsible, that will help to aid and enhance the digestion of food. So which means the ruminants are also benefiting from the bacteria. The bacteria benefit from the ruminant also benefit from the bacteria, and then no harm is caused. So in that kind of relationship, we call it a mutual relationship. In fact, symbiotic or mutual relationship, where the two organisms that are involved actually benefit from each other. Option A says saprophytic. It should have been saprophytic if one was feeding on a dead decaying organism, okay, dead decaying plant for instance, while the other one is not benefiting. It should have been saprophytic. So option A is eliminated. Option B say parasitic. It should have been parasitic if one of the organism was benefiting while the other one was suffering, okay, or was bearing loss, okay, where we have a parasite and then we have the host. So option B is also eliminated because both of them are actually benefiting from each other. Option C says symbiotic. Yes, symbiotic is a mutual relationship. There is a mutual benefit between the ruminant and the bacteria. So option C is correct. Option D says heterotrophic. Heterotrophic, yes, because one has to depend on the other one, okay? But in this case now, both of them are depending on each other. They are benefiting from each other. So the correct answer here is option C, symbiotic. Question 62. A photosynthetic carnivorous plant which feeds on insects is called what? Insectivorous. Now, when we talk about carnivorous, of course, these are two things now. Carnivorous plants. Carnivore are organisms that feed on the flesh of other organisms. They are carnivore. They are carnivorous. Okay, we have carnivorous plants, photosynthetic. So, which means that they carry out photosynthesis. Okay, they have chlorophyll. And they can also, so they have two functions here. They can manufacture their food themselves because of this photosynthesis, those plants, and then they can also feed on insects. What they do, like the pitcher plant, yes, the pitcher plant, the sundew plant, those are plants that they have openings, okay, that once insects get into them, of course, they have colors that are attractive, okay, that attract insects. Then once the insects get on, they have a cup like the pitcher plant, okay, in the opening. Once the plant gets into it and falls into it while it's trying to get the nectar, what happens? It closes up and then it decays the plants there and feeds on that plant. So those type of plants are called insectivorous because they feed on insects. Even though they are carnivorous plants, they see that. Option A says parasitic. Option B says no, saprophytic, herbivorous, and then insectivorous. Insectivorous because they feed majorly on insects. So they have that name, that is insectivorous. They are herbivores. They are not herbivores because they are not feeding on plants, herbs, okay? They are not saprophytic because they are not feeding on dead decaying plant or organism, and they are not parasitic because the insect that is coming to also suck the nectar, okay, is also coming to benefit. But in the course of trying to benefit, it gets entrapped, okay, and then the carnivorous plant actually feeds on it and decays it, and then it's not that it has mouth to feed on it, okay, it will secrete some things that will make the insects to decay in there, and then it use the nutrient for growth because it needs nitrogen for growth. Okay, so option D, insectivorous, is the correct answer. Now let's move on to question 63. Xerophytes are mostly found in the where? We have arid land, we have tropical rainforest, we have mountain forest, we have Sudan savanna. Now when we talk about xerophytes are plants usually that grow in dry environments, okay, places where there are little water, okay, that is windy, okay, windy environment where there are just little or no water in that environment, okay. Those are what we call the xerophytes. Xerophyte, you can see xerophyte. So they grow in those places, and then what they do is they adapt, in that environment. They develop some features that make them adapt because there are little or no water. The environment is dry, okay, of course you can tell the way the body, the stem, the leaves will look like, because the environment is actually a dry land. Option A says arid land. Arid land is another word we use for dry, okay, land that is dry. So we talk about the deserts, okay, that's where you can find the xerophyte. They grow up in desert places, okay. Arid land are dry places. So these are xerophyte. Option B says tropical rainforest. Rainforest, we have tall trees, we have canopy trees, we have broad leaves, okay, of those plants that are in that environment, because there are high level of rain that falls in that environment. So it is not tropical rainforest. We have the mountain forest, we have the forest where we have the wild animals, we have big trees, we have tall piece of land, we have high mountain, like the mountain, just as the name, mountain forest, okay. We have the big trees in that place. So the place is not entirely dry, okay, like the desert, okay, that we have that. So it's not option C. Then the savanna is not. So the correct answer here is the arid land. Arid land is the land that is dry, okay, like the desert, where we have little or no water. That's where the xerophytes actually are mostly found. So the correct answer is option A, arid land. Let's move on to question number 64. In which zone of the marine habitat does the organisms require adaptation for attachment? Where will the organism attach to? Of course, option A says supertidal zone. The supertidal zone is the zone that we refer to as the splash zone, okay. That's the open water, the water surface, okay, where we have the water, where you can, of course, as the name implies, splash. When you splash, it is the surface where the water is on the land, okay. That's the supertidal zone. The subtidal zone, okay, and then we have the intertidal zone, we have the abyssal zone. So I think let's look at the diagram so that we can understand and explain this further. So you can look at the diagram now. We are talking about the ocean. You can see the supertidal zone. This is this part now, okay. This part is referred to as the supertidal. This is the ocean we have here. This is the water we have here. The surface, that's the splash zone. That's the supertidal zone, okay. Then the other zone is the intertidal zone. The intertidal zone is, you can see, this is the water, okay, your ocean, the open sea, you have it, and then this is the what? This is the sand. This you have it. This is the land, okay, and then this is the water. So which means that the point that connects the land, okay, to the water is what we call the intertidal zone. It's also referred to as the littoral zone. So littoral zone and intertidal zone are the same thing. So it's a question, you can see it as littoral zone, LITTORAL, okay, or it is intertidal zone. So the point where the land and the water mixes. So that is usually the point where organisms can come and attach themselves to in the water, okay, in the water. So not the supertidal zone, it's just the splash zone on top of this. Organisms will not attach themselves to this. They want to attach where they can, when they come down, the point where the land connects or joins the water is the point. The littoral zone or the intertidal zone is where they get attached to, okay. Then the subtidal zone has to go deeper, okay, than where the intertidal zone. You go deeper into the sea. Organism will not attach there, and then you have the other part, which is the abyssal zone. So let's go back to the options and see the correct answer now. So the part where the organisms require adaptation for attachment, okay, it's not the supertidal zone. We have seen the diagram. It's not the subtidal zone. It's not the abyssal zone. It is the intertidal or the littoral zone. So the correct answer is option C. Question 65. Energy transfer in plants and animals are in the form of what? Okay. We have answered this question. It's repeated in another format again, okay. Energy transfer in plants and animals are in the form of what? Don't forget that for us to have transfer of energy, okay, respiration should have taken place. And then we said we have the aerobic and anaerobic respiration. And then we said in the first stage of respiration, which is referred to as glycolysis, the food that is consumed, the carbohydrate that is consumed, the sugar, 6 carbon sugar that is consumed is broken down into 3 carbon sugar, which we call the pyruvic acid. And once that is produced, energy is also produced in turn. As that food is broken down, the conversion of the 6 carbon atom is converted to 3 carbon atom, which is pyruvic acid, and energy is also produced in that process. And the energy is always in the form of adenosine triphosphate, which is for short ATP. So energy transfer in plants and animals are in the form of not DNA, not GTP, not RNA or whatever. The correct answer is adenosine triphosphate, which is what? Option B. Let's move on to question number 66. The pigment carrying oxygen in the blood is, of course, this is another bonus question, okay? The pigment carrying oxygen in the blood is what? Don't forget, when we talk about the pigment carrying oxygen, we are talking about the blood we are referring to here is actually the red blood cell, okay? And there is a pigment that makes it red. That what gives that color of red in the red blood cell is what we call hemoglobin. And that hemoglobin, the function is to what? To carry oxygen, okay? Transport oxygen in the blood, to give energy, of course, to the part of the body where energy is needed from the food, and to remove energy and then, send it into where the energy is needed in the body, okay? It is the red blood. Option A says plasma. Plasma is, the yellow color that we have in the blood. We have yellow color. If you have your blood collected and then it is spinned, okay, centrifuge, in the centrifuge machine, okay, and then when you spin it, after some time it settles, okay. When you check it, you bring it out, you discover that the lower part you can have the blood, the red blood, and then upper part you have the yellow, okay. Of course, some call it serum, okay, but you have that color of that plasma there. That is what? Yellow in color. That is what is responsible for blood clotting. Somebody has a cut and then the injury is able to, to cover up for that, to avoid, bleeding, okay. It is the what? The plasma that is responsible for blood clotting. Option B says hemoglobin. Yes, hemoglobin is the red pigment that is present in the red blood cells. And what does it do? The function is what? To carry oxygen in the blood, okay? And then it forms what we call the oxyhemoglobin. Option C says oxyhemoglobin. Oxyhemoglobin is not the pigment. Oxyhemoglobin is when oxygen, okay, that has been carried, okay, in the blood has attached to the what? Hemoglobin. So what we have is what? Oxyhemoglobin, okay, because oxygen is attached to it. But the pigment itself is hemoglobin, not oxyhemoglobin, okay. And then we have erythrocyte. Erythrocyte is another name that is called by red blood cells, okay. Red blood cells are also referred to as erythrocyte, and you know what they do? The red blood cell is what carries the what? The hemoglobin, okay. So which means the answer is not, the question says the pigment carrying oxygen, okay, not the cell carrying the pigment, okay. If it is cell carrying the pigment, it would have been erythrocyte, because the hemoglobin is found in the what? The red blood cell, okay. But the question says the pigment carrying oxygen, so the pigment itself, the red pigment, is what? It's actually hemoglobin. So the correct answer is option B. Question 67. Production of healthier offspring, viable seeds, and formation of new varieties are good characteristics of what? Self-pollination, cross-pollination, wind pollination, insect pollination. Insect pollination is the type of pollination that requires, the pollination that is induced, that is driven by insects, okay? Wind pollination is the pollination that it is the wind that actually allows the pollination to take place. When we talk about pollination itself, pollination has to do with like what we call the fertilization process, okay? We have in human. Pollination leads to fertilization because there is transfer of pollen grains, okay, in plants. Now, transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a plant, of a flower plant, either to the same plant or to the stigma of another plant, okay. When there is transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a plant or of a flower to another particular type of plant, okay, to the stigma of another plant, we say that is what? A cross pollination, which is this. But option A says self-pollination. Pollination that has to do with the pollen grains usually is moving on, is transferring to the same plant or the same flower. So it's not crossing to another plant. Now, research has shown that self-pollination is suitable in an environment that is stable, okay? But the offspring that are produced from that process are actually weak offspring, okay? Offspring that are weak, so which means they are not viable, okay? They are not healthier, okay? That's what it means for self-pollination. But for cross-pollination, because the pollen grains, okay, are actually, transferred to, from the anther to the stigma of another plant, okay, or another flower that has a different, characteristic, different traits or different gene present in it, okay, it tends to give rise to what? To healthier, offspring. Okay, just like we talk about inbreeding in humans, and then we talk about the outbreeding, okay, the inbreeding, and then we talk about the crossbreeding, and so on and so forth. So the self-pollination will give rise to what? Weak offsprings, okay, while the cross-pollination, there's transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a particular plant or flower to the stigma of another plant. So we say cross-pollination has taken place. So it gives rise to healthier, and viable offspring. So the correct answer here is option B, cross-pollination. Question 68. One of the following is a courtship behavior in animals. Courtship behavior in animals. Option A says fighting, B, display, hibernation, and then feeding. When we are talking about courtship behavior, there are some attributes, okay? There are some traits, there are some features, okay, that a particular organism has, okay? But it needs to make noise about it because it needs the male counterpart or the female counterpart for it to be able to join together to reproduce, so that they can give rise to new ones, the offspring that look like them. So those traits, they are kind of display, of course, maybe in time of color. Okay, they want to show their color, like we have the gola fold in the agama lizard, okay, with that color, beautiful, we have the head with the pink color and the blue, okay, neck. It shows this, and you see it nodding its head. That's a kind of display, so that the female counterpart can notice it and say, oh, this is a fine one. It happens even in humans, okay? You see, someone wants to get married, they take care of themselves, they display themselves and show themselves, their body structure, so that they can get attracted to the other counterpart, whether the male or the female counterpart. So it happens in animals. Animals will display their colors, they will display their body, so that the other organism, their counterpart, can see them, they can mate with them, reproduce, and then they can be able to give rise to their young ones. So fighting is eliminated. Option B, display, yes, more likely. Option C, hibernation, has to do with what they had to do with, they go into, not extinction, they just go down for some time, go silent, for some time, then eventually they come up. Of course, this will not also be noticed. If that happens, the other counterpart of the organism will not notice them, okay, for it. So this also is not a courtship behavior, and then feeding is also not courtship behavior. So the courtship behavior among this option here is option B, which is display. Let's move on to question number 69. In blood transfusion, a patient with group AB receives what? Don't forget that we have blood group A, blood group B, blood group AB, and blood group O. Those are the 4 blood groups that we have, okay? And then it doesn't change. Over in the lifetime, you have it. That's how you live with it. So we refer to blood group O as the universal donor, okay? Blood group O can donate to all the other blood groups. Blood group O, A, B, AB, and then to O. While blood group AB, now because we have A and we have B present there, so which means that blood group A, B can receive, or blood group A can donate to AB, blood group B can donate to AB because there's B there, then blood group AB can also donate to itself, and then blood group O, which is a universal donor, can give to anybody, can also donate to this. In other words, we are saying that anyone with blood group AB can receive blood from blood group, any patient with blood group A can receive blood from any patient with blood group B, okay, can also receive blood from any patient with blood group AB, and then from anyone that has what? Blood group what? O, because blood group O can donate to anybody, okay, even though they can't receive from anybody, they can donate to everybody. So in other words, the question says in blood transfusion, a patient with group AB receives, option A says, from group A, from group B, and AB. Yes, this is correct, okay? But we have O must be included there because blood group O is a universal what? Donor. So they can also give to what? To AB. So blood group O, A, and B. But we don't have AB here, so this is also not correct. Blood group O, blood group B, AB. This is not also correct because we don't have blood group A here. You can also receive from A. Blood group O, A, B, and AB. So which means that blood group AB can receive from all the other blood groups, that we have. So we refer to them as universal recipient. Universal recipient. So the correct answer is option D. Do you have any question bothering you at all on all that we have done so far? Please feel free to ask your question. All you need to do is to click on the link in the description below that takes you to the Myschool website. There, you'll be able to ask your questions, and then answers will be provided within the shortest period of time. Now, let's move on to question number 70. A trait that is always expressed during crossing of hereditary characteristics is what? A trait that is always expressed, we can see it, okay, during the crossing of hereditary characteristics is called what? Let's look at the board to show that if we have, let's say we have, okay, that a person is tall, we have this, and then we have small letter t, okay, and then let's have this small letter t for shortness. For tallness, t for tallness. Then if we split this, we want to look at this just to cross, okay, we split this also, t and t. So when we cross them, this comes to this, so we have t here, and then we have small letter t, okay, then this also comes to this, and then we have small t and small t. So this comes here also, this comes here to this, then we have capital T and small t, then this also comes here to have small t and small t. Now, I want to use this now to explain the options that we have. We say a trait that is always expressed during crossing of hereditary characteristics called. Now, we have this t here for tallness. So which means that any offspring that has this one and this, now there are two alleles that we have here. We call it alleles. Now this is the allele for tallness, and this is the allele for shortness. So these two are traits that are in this particular offspring, okay, but this one now is dominant. So which means that the one that will be seen in this offspring will be that what? This offspring is actually tall, but it does not mean that it does not have this offspring being tall also has the traits that it could be short. The shortness is there, but this one is not fully expressed, okay, it's not well expressed, it is silent. So we call this one recessive, okay, because it is what? It is silent. It is there, but it is not well pronounced. But this one now that is well pronounced, we can see it, is what we call the dominant, okay, dominant. It is there, it is dominating. In this case now, there is no capital T here, so that means this offspring will actually be short, okay? Of course, we cannot call this recessive now because it is only the same thing we have here. And because we have the two of them as the same shortness, so we call it homozygous, okay? Homozygous. Homozygous trait is what this is now. So which means this offspring will actually be short because we have the short small letter t for the two of them, homozygous. They are the same traits that we have there. Then for this also, of course, it's like this already. With this one, we can also call it, we call this one because we have two traits here for tallness and shortness here. Even though one is recessive, silent, while the other one is dominant, okay? But the two of them can actually be referred to as heterozygous traits because we can have the traits of both the tallness and the shortness. Now, they are different, but they are together. Even though one is more expressed than the other one, and this one also is just like this one. So we have been able to explain what the dominant is when we have a trait that is well pronounced, that is always expressed, whether it is together, whether it is the same, or whether it is different. Once it appears there, it is a dominant. We call it dominant trait, okay? That's dominant trait. Then in this case, we have the recessive trait. The small letter t is recessive because it is not expressed. Even though it is there, it is not expressed like this. So we call this recessive trait. So the small letter t is recessive. It is there, but it is not dominating. It is not pronounced like this. So the offspring that has this capital T and small t now will definitely be tall. But if you now see this offspring now, maybe when it grows up and then it gets married, it's possible that it could now give birth to a child that is short, even though he is tall. It is because he had the trait, the gene in him of what? Of shortness. So because of that, it is less pronounced. It is silent. We call it recessive. Why this one that is pronounced, that is expressed, is what we call the dominant trait. And then the two of them together can be called heterozygote because there are two different traits together, both the dominant and the trait together. Then in this case, we call this homozygous because we have the two of them are the same. Shortness. Together, they are homozygous, and then we have the heterozygous. So let's move on to the screen and see the best option now. A trait that is always expressed during crossing of hereditary characteristics is not recessive trait, it is not homozygous trait, it is not heterozygous trait, but it is dominant trait. So the correct answer is option B. Do you have better steps or better explanations to all the questions we have gone through? Please feel free to share. All you need to do is to go to the comment section, indicate the question number and the solution you would like to share. Question number 71. Blood group AB is considered as universal recipient because they can receive blood from groups. So this question is just similar to what we just did, okay? It's asked in another way. So blood group AB, they are referred to as universal recipient because they can accept or they can receive blood from groups O, group A, group AB, and then group B. They are AB, it is AB because it has A and B, present in them, the antibody are present in them. So they can receive from blood group A, they can receive from another patient that has blood group B, they can receive from a patient that has AB like them, and they can also receive from a patient that has what? Blood group O, because blood group O are universal donor, okay? So option A says A and O, B and O, no. Option B, C says A, B and O. Option D says A, B and O. So they can receive from patients with blood group A, from blood group B, blood group AB, and then blood group O. So the correct answer is option D. Let's move on to question number 72. An example of organism that exhibits counter shading to escape from its predator is what? Option A says grasshopper, option B says toad, option C says fish, option D says chameleon. Please don't be too much in a hurry to go for chameleon because it is actually tempting. Yeah, chameleon has a kind of camouflage, okay, actually that makes them to blend their color, the color of their skin, okay, to the environment, just to be able to escape from predator. But they don't have this exhibit this counter shading, okay. Counter shading is a type of camouflage that helps organism, okay, to blend to their environment by casting shadows, okay. We call them a contrast, okay. Organisms that are in darker area cast shadow. They have a lighter place. So part of the organism will be lighter, while the other half will be what? Will be darker. The fishes in the water actually do that, okay. They have they're like reptiles, okay. They have that when there's shadow, they are in the water, and then there's a predator that's approaching. You see them tending towards the part that is what? Dark. That part that is dark now blends with the environment, with the water, such that the organism does not see them. So the part that is lighter is shaded away from the predator. So the predator cannot see them like, oh, this is the fish I actually want to go for. This is the prey I'm actually going for. So fishes, the reptiles actually exhibit that kind of features, okay. Though the chameleon also have camouflage to blend its color with the body, does not exhibit counter shading, okay. So the correct answer is option C. Question number 73. A form of adaptive coloration that helps animals to remain unnoticed is what? Just like the question we just answered. Option A says hibernation. Hibernation has to do with a state of dormancy, okay, in animals. When the environment is dry, okay, when the environment is hot, okay, they hibernate, okay. What they do that is they become dormant. Usually this happens during the winter, okay, in order for them to survive. So they will hibernate. They will just remain dormant for some time. What they do is they store their energy, the fat, they store its energy, and then to be able to carry out, so that in a time where they'll be able to use it for metabolic activity. So they just remain dormant at that particular point in time. But this happens in the winter time. The estivation also is like this. Okay, it's similar to hibernation. It's a time of dormancy of animals, okay, in order for them to survive the dry weather condition. But usually this estivation usually takes place during the summer, okay? Hibernation takes place during winter, okay? It's a time of dormancy. They try to what? To retain their energy. They just remain dormant at that point in time. So hibernation, estivation, they are alike, they are similar, just that this one has take place during the winter, this takes place in summer. Counter shading, of course, we just saw that before. It's a type of camouflage, okay, where animals want to survive, okay? They have a kind of color contrast. We have maybe the upper part of the animal is darker while the lower part, okay, is actually lighter in color. They do that to escape from predators and to survive and adapt in their environment. While migration has to do with the movement of organisms from one place to the other. So a form of adaptive coloration, okay, that helps animals to remain unnoticed is counter shading. The correct answer is option C. Now let's move on to question number 74. We have another diagram here. Let's identify. Of course, this is the diagram of an insect, okay? Whether it is termite, whether it is whatever, this is an insect, okay? And then the first part says you should use the diagram above to answer the question that follows. The part labeled III is what? Okay, Roman figure 1, okay, let's identify Roman figure 1. Of course, that's where the mouth part is, okay? That's the labium, and that's what we call the maxillae. The maxillae is there at that point, Roman figure 1. Then Roman figure 2, this is the head of the insect, that's the head. And then Roman figure 3, directly under the head of the insect, we have the thorax. Thorax comes immediately after the head part of the what? Of the insect. And then the Roman figure 4, of course, this is the what? This is the abdomen. So option A says abdomen. We are looking at the part labeled III. Option A is abdomen, that is IV, that is wrong. Option B is head. Head, this is Roman figure 2, that is head, that is wrong. Option C is maxilla. Maxilla is Roman figure 1, that's where we have the mouth part. And Roman figure 4, that's option D is thorax. Thorax is just directly after this, the head, which is what Roman figure 3. So the correct answer is option D, thorax. Now let's move on to question number 75. Lamarck's theory of evolution is based on the idea of what? Okay. This man, this scientist, we call the full name is JB, that's Jean Baptiste Lamarck, gave the principle of Lamarckism. And what he said has to do with the ability for parent, organisms to be able to pass on the traits they acquire, the traits they have to their what? Offspring that they give rise to. Okay, that's what the principle, the Lamarckism, the principle of Lamarckism or Lamarck's theory actually talks about of evolution, that older parents, okay, when they reproduce, they give birth to young ones, they have some traits in them. So they pass on those traits, those characteristics to the young ones that they have, and then they inherit those acquired traits. So option A says the inheritance of acquired traits. Yes, that's what Lamarck's theory of evolution actually talked about. So option A is correct. Option B says organism survival of the fittest. Of course, we know that is Charles Darwin. Option B, C says organisms constantly struggling for existence. That's survival of the fittest, which is what also has having to do with what? Charles Darwin. And option D, plenty of spring produced by organisms. So that one is not belonging to. So Lamarck's theory of evolution is based on the idea of what? The inheritance of acquired traits. So the correct answer is option A. I hope you enjoyed this content because I really did. If yes, please don't forget to click on the like button, hit the subscribe button, and finally tap on the notification bell to keep you informed once we update or upload our next video.